Hey everyone, we're focusing this episode on professional associations and how to enhance member value through video. Welcome to Starting Points, a series for content managers, marketers, and communications professionals where we chat in depth about all aspects of producing engaging video. Give us a like and hit subscribe if you're enjoying these creative chats. I'm Matt Nagy, Creative Director of Origin Story, a creative communications company based in the Washington, D.C. area. Joining me is one of my business partners and good friends, Justin Schauble. He's the executive producer of New District Media in Washington, D.C. And for the past 15 years, he and his team have created national and local award-winning content that has been shared among practitioners, benefactors, and respective peers through a global community of nonprofit associations, institutions, and corporate entities. Justin is also an adjunct instructor in the Master of Design Management and Communications program at Georgetown University. Justin, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's good to be here.
So of all the people in this business, you and I have worked together the longest. We were classmates at American University in DC, and we worked together there. We worked together again internally at a professional association, and we're business partners now. So the takeaway from this is that we know way too much about each other.
That's right. Probably too much. A lot of airline trips and occasional road trip to follow, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of shoots, a lot of productions together, and we've had a lot of fun along the way. So I'm excited about this episode because in our market here in DC, there are thousands of associations with members and stakeholders that need to be communicated with. We've had the good fortune to work closely with many of these associations, and we want to share some of our ideas on how video can be used effectively for messaging, education, and events to enhance member value and further the missions of these associations. With the COVID-19 pandemic ongoing, we're going to focus on ways to effectively use video right now. Organizations still need to share ideas, probably now more than ever, and video should be part of that strategic conversation. So first up, one of the things we often hear from associations about video is that it's either too expensive or there's a sense that it's intimidating. So Justin, how should associations look at video and how can they get the most out of it?
That's a great question, Matt. I think that when we're looking at video, we have to understand that, number one, if it's going to live on a search engine or something like YouTube, YouTube's the number 2 search engine owned by the number 1 search engine, Google, and YouTube is, as we know, is all video, right? So it's video content. So how do you break through that clutter? How do you elevate, educate, and celebrate your membership at the same time? So this happens by having really a strategic framework around your video assets. And that's where, we come in and we help assist our clients. Right? We try to come in and make sure that we're addressing a particular goal. If the goal is to educate, then that's going to be a very different video approach than, say, if the goal is to promote another product or an event or some sort of other membership-based activity. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree because I think you talked a little bit about the 3 pillars, and so educating, elevating, celebrating. Those are really the core principles of most associations. And, when they do a video project like that, you have to ask yourself, if you're in the position, is it hitting one of those principles? And, one of the things I wanted to ask you is if we could deep dive a little bit more into educate, elevate, and celebrate. So what does that mean to you when in regards to video for associations?
Well, I think that number one, as members come together, even during COVID virtually, we want to celebrate. We want to celebrate our professions, right? It doesn't matter what association. All associations have the same goals, and that's to celebrate the profession and to really help educate the membership to be better at whatever job that they're, job function that they're performing, right? I mean, that's it. And so this comes back to the association's brand promise to their members, which is, if I, as the membership association, can deliver high quality education in a timely manner that is relevant to my members, then there's a high probability that I'm going to be successful, right? I mean, that's it. That's really, in a nutshell, how we have to approach it. And that goes for, by the way, that goes for all content, Matt. That's not just video, that's also written content, and marketers know that. But we get scared when we start to look at video because it seems like this big task that we have to overcome. There are elements to it that are very different than graphics or written communications, but it's another tool in the marketer and the educational arsenal.
Absolutely. And members are looking to be engaged. They want guidance, they want information, they want high quality education from their associations because they want to be better at their jobs, they want to be better at their profession, they want to feel like they're making a difference. So super important to really understand your audience and engage with them on that level. So moving on, given the pandemic and everything that's going on related to it, how does remote video help support the mission of association? We can't do a lot of production. Everybody's trying to be safe and socially distanced. So we're a little bit limited how we can do some traditional types of production work. So let's talk about remote video and how that's working right now.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, when we first talked, about COVID and, how social distancing was going to have to take place, that thank goodness that it wasn't 10 years ago, right?
Absolutely. This would have been a lot different 10 years ago. The technology and the tools and just the ability to use video conferencing software is in a completely different place than it was 10 years ago. So technology has really enabled the communications and to be able to move on.
This has changed. This has changed for us. I think that, we're looking at it, and we had to look at it in a different way. I mean, fortunately, overcoming the friction of space is something that we've had to do, since the beginning, because it's expensive for us to get on a plane, or it's expensive for experts to get on a plane. So typically these happened around big, large meetings. And when the meetings went virtual, we had to go virtual too.
Yeah, we had to adjust to the situation just like all the associations did, and we had to change our strategies because we knew that we were going to have to communicate differently with all of the membership and work differently with the clients that we serve. And so we've had to adjust the strategy. This idea of doing remote captures, remote interviews, I both agree. Don't you think this is going to be here way beyond the end of the pandemic? This is going to be part of a blended format going forward.
Yeah, I think that this is, everybody keeps using the term new normal, and it is getting old to hear, but the reality is that it is a new normal, and that new normal is going to be a blended approach. I think we're going to see live and virtual come together in a way that really we've never seen before, and that we can't really imagine right now. And I'm not just talking about overseas travelers as well who are coming to U.S.-based meetings, or vice versa. I'm talking about even when members have to make a decision about their time. Now, nothing is going to replace face-to-face. As humans, we're pack animals. We have to be, we have to have some sort of interaction. But I want to touch real quick, though. I do want to touch back to a point that you made earlier, which is some of these barriers of time. And that's really what it is. Meetings cost a lot of money to produce, and they cost a lot of money to produce online as well. We have this idea that virtual is free, and it's not. It takes a lot of human resources and a lot of technology to pull that off. And I think that it's important that we all sort of recognize that a lot of people, especially members within member-based organizations, a lot of members are donating their time. But now through COVID, for example, they're balancing a work-life situation that is probably less than ideal, especially with education. If you have small children or children who require any assistance at home for education, that's a huge burden for a lot of people, and so getting everybody together for 1 hour virtually I think is a tougher ask in many ways than asking them to come together for 1 hour at a live meeting. So we just have to recognize where the barriers are and then look at ways that we can mitigate those.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, I agree that the barriers, people are being asked to do more with less, and associations sometimes are struggling just because of the economic conditions that we're going through. They still need to get their messaging out, do their communication, do their education. And so most associations typically had in-person events, large conferences, small meetings, individual thought groups, things like that. Now everything's gone virtual. So we have an entire generation of people really getting into the concept of virtual events. So I want to get your thoughts on the concept of synchronous education versus asynchronous education, and how associations should look at virtual events going forward.
Yeah, I think that virtual events are both synchronous and asynchronous, as you pointed out, are going to be extremely important. Whether it's pre-taped and we're rolling it for a live audience, or there's so many variations of this, or it's actually recorded live like a webinar, and then made available for those after the fact who maybe couldn't have attended. Again, at the end of the day, if we can. Virtual is going to allow us to give the learner an opportunity to learn on their own schedule. I think that a lot of organizations, especially with live events, are going to I think you're going to see a lot of folks packaging all their content for an online audience at the same time. The writing is so clearly on the wall. It's going to have to be uniquely structured in a way, because you don't want to de-incentivize the in-person portion. I'm saying this is after COVID is hopefully long behind us, and we're resuming live sessions with thousands of people in the same place. You don't want to de-incentivize being there, but you have to recognize that there are benefits to both. And just like a Venn diagram, we just have to sort of find that unique center that can somehow feel catered to the individual.
Yeah, I would agree. And given the limitations that we have to work with, trying to create an online experience with a virtual event should be at the top of the priority list, because you may not be able to fully recreate the in-person experience, but I don't think you should. Online virtual events should be something different, that they're complementary at this, they're replacing at this point, but eventually they're going to be complementary to that in-person experience. And like you said, one of the advantages is that it's tailored to the learner. Everybody learns differently, so they're going to be able to, if it's a recorded webinar or presentation, they're going to be able to stop, they're going to be able to pause. They may not be able to ask questions, but they're going to be able to engage with that, and they're only going to get better. We're kind of at I was telling people the other day, we're at like the original iPhone, model of virtual events. Imagine what 10 years down the line is going to look like.
So Matt, one of the things, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, is that virtual versus live events. When you're live, your audience is a captive audience, and so you can do a 60-minute or 90-minute presentation, and it doesn't have to be as entertaining, educating, or as we say, edutaining at the same time. Whereas when it's online and people can jump and skip through and kind of pick out the parts of the presentation that they're looking for, means that we kind of have to step up our game in how we present as well. And so I think that that's going to be one of the bonuses, that we're going to see better presentation skills come out of this as well. I think that a lot of people are learning that you can't just flip through the PowerPoint in the same way that you could in a live setting. when numbers and statistics may count, right? So I think that you're going to have more slides with less copy on it, and more real life examples that are sort of played into it, so that you're bringing more commentary to the slides. And I think that happens. That's going to happen in most fields.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this a lot, especially with our association clients and things like that, about different ways to try and make these types of presentations more effective, more engaging, better guidelines and best practices with slides and presentations. And you're right, it's going to force a lot of people to have to, kind of get out of their comfort zones and really look at the kind of, like you said, edutainment aspect of it, and try and create that commentary where you're just not regurgitating information on a slide. You're actually adding your thoughts, your information to it. So along those lines, as we move forward in the pandemic and we have to continue to produce these types of content, what effective types of video can be produced remotely or with low impact at this point? Let's talk about a few.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that it comes down to a couple of different categories, Matt. I think that one-on-one conversations, or one-on-two really, can allow you to deep dive into particular topics and actually get multiple perspectives at the same time. And I find those incredibly engaging, especially if you have two thought leaders come to the table with a good moderator. That's dynamic. If it's relevant and it's dynamic, you've got a good recipe for content. Another format is kind of to elaborate a little larger on the panel, where maybe you have panel presentations followed by a Q&A, where each panelist provides a 10-minute, 5 to 10 minute presentation on a pillar topic that all revolves around a central core theme, and then followed by a roundtable discussion. Those are longer format, but those also work really, really well. So those are two great models, and there are plenty of software / hardware solutions. I mean, we use a combination for our clients that allow us different flexibility depending on the treatment. I mean, if you're bringing PowerPoint presentations in, then we're going to go in one direction. But if it's just a roundtable conversation, we may go in a different direction. That gives us a little bit more broadcast capabilities, even through IP. And as long as each end user, each end participant of that conference has a strong internet connection, we've seen good results.
We have, and I think along those lines, one of the reasons why the associations that we work with have seen some great results all comes back to, what we always talk about is these packages, these presentations, these video communication packages that we put together are all produced. They're all planned. There's a lot of planning that goes into just doing a one-on-one panel, and I think that's a preconception that people don't really understand, is that most professionals, part of an association, just don't hop on Zoom and talk for 15-20 minutes. And a lot of times what happens if we see that, the results can be less than ideal. So you want to try and think about what you're going to talk about, the points that you're going to want to talk about, and talk with your communications professionals that you're working with in an association, the people that we interact with, about what is the goal, what are you trying to get out of it, how are we going to do the presentation, can we make it interactive, are there visuals that we can show, how is it going to be presented and distributed, things like that. So talk a little about your experience as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. The key is planning, pre-production. There's two sides to every project. There's the strategy, and then there's the execution. And if you don't have a good strategy, you're not going to have great execution. It's plain and simple. And this isn't a foreign concept, but for some reason, in some cases, it's forgotten. And again, we've sort of stigmatized online, that online should be free, that online doesn't take a lot of effort, that you just turn your camera on and you go. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So, I praise these associations that, especially that were scheduled to have a live meeting and had the rug pulled out from underneath them, and were able to quickly pivot.
Some of the things to think about if you're watching this and you're trying to think about how to make that experience better, that's what you want to do. You want to create an experience. You want to create something that people are going to remember, that they're going to want to spend time and give their time, and that they're going to get a lot out of. You want to have some type of virtual interaction. If everything can't be live, consider using a lot of prepackaged content. So you don't have to have people online and live for hours on end or all these different sessions. You can record your SMEs ahead of time. You could even record your SMEs ahead of time, and you could, while the presentation is going, they can be online for a chat, utilizing the chat function to ask questions while their presentation is going, and frees them up.
And I think that's the best, honestly, I think that's one of the best formats, right? If you can pre-tape the presentation and it's like movie night. We all got together for an hour to watch a presentation that the expert who is presenting is now available in that chat and is able to keep that conversation going during that hour and even beyond. I think that's a great way of this hybrid solution, because that ensures that you're going to have a solid presentation, right? I mean, that you are able to put some production into that, and it gives you that interactive component.
So, last question I want to move on to is one of the things you and I talk so much about: distribution. So once you've produced this type of content, what are the tips you would give associations on how to get the most members to see it?
Yeah, I think that this is for a lot of folks, this is the hard part, right? Because it used to be the thought if we built it, and we stood something up, everybody would want to watch it. And the space is so cluttered, and our time, this all goes back to that central theme of time. Our time is precious to us. So you, as a marketer for that association, have to do a couple things. Number one, you have to make us a promise. You have to promise the members that what information we're going to share with you and that we're going to ask for your time is relevant, is dynamic, and is going to help elevate, celebrate, and educate, right? I mean, that's it. That's the promise. And if we can stick to that core theme, or those core themes, then I think that members, if they are watching something relevant to them, something that they can take back into their practice and start to leverage today, that's it. That's the golden ticket, right?
Yeah, and it can be tough sometimes internally to try and get multiple groups and multiple business lines and things to all be aligned. It takes a lot of effort, and that can be really difficult. I mean, you and I have both worked inside associations. We know that that collaboration can be very challenging, and you really have to work at it to break down those silos.
Yeah, exactly. And just one more point to make about this is that it's not a one-way street, right? It's not, we're the organization and we push content to the members. There has to be a lot of social listening as well. You have to listen to those communication channels to the members that you're serving, so that what relevant information they're asking for. Because if they're asking for information A and you're delivering information B, and then you wonder why this didn't catch fire the way that we had hoped it would, it's a critical step was missed in that communication feedback process.
Yeah, you're right. Talk about the distribution strategy at the beginning. Understand where it's going to go and have those conversations early so that it's not an afterthought. And so as we wrap things up here, Justin, final thoughts on things we've talked about, a couple of takeaways for our audience?
Yeah, I think, again, just to kind of reiterate those, the core principles I think that most nonprofit associations, member-based associations, really focus on, educating, celebrating, and elevating their professions, I think is is key. I mean, if we make sure that we know what the goal is, and that the video, whatever video that we're producing, I mean, we talked a lot about online video, to replace some live events, but clearly there are other forms of video, motion graphic, animation videos that we can leverage, regardless what the video outcome is. If it's got to meet a goal, stick to that strategy, build it, make sure that everybody's on board, and stick to it. And I think that your videos will be 10 times more successful.
I couldn't agree more. And I think a final thought on my side would be, something we mentioned is that, virtual does not equal free. It may be more cost effective, but there still is a lot of planning and there's a lot of effort that goes into producing quality content. So what you really are trying to create is that experience. You want to create that experience that hits those core pillars like we talked about, so that your membership really feels engaged with you. And they're looking to that association for direction, for guidance, for help. Keep video as part of that strategy, because they'll really like it, and they'll probably thank you for it later. So Justin, thank you so much for joining me for your insights. I know we've got a lot more to say about working with associations, so at some point we'll do a follow-up. Love to have you come back for another chat.
Oh, I appreciate it, Matt. Thanks so much for having me today.
You can learn more about Justin and New District Media at newdistrictmedia.com. and can also connect with New District Media and Justin on LinkedIn. Thanks to everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.